Ethan Carter had always believed that the universe held more mysteries than anyone could ever solve. As a xenobiologist, he had studied dozens of alien species, traveling to worlds that most humans had never even heard of. Yet, when he received the urgent message from the Thrylan Empire, he felt a mixture of excitement and unease. The message was simple, almost desperate. Their princess was gravely ill, and no Thrylan healer had been able to cure her. They were requesting a human physician. It was unusual for the Thrylan to ask for human help. Humans were regarded as fragile, unpredictable, and in many ways primitive by most interstellar species. The Thrylan Empire, known for its rigid hierarchy and technological superiority, rarely admitted that any outsider could possess the skills or knowledge they lacked. Ethan understood that stepping onto their world was not just a professional challenge, it was a delicate political maneuver. He arrived in orbit around the Thrylan capital aboard a small transport ship, its white hull gleaming against the violet skies of the planet. From the observation deck, Ethan could see the sprawling city below, its towers spiraling like glass reeds into the clouds. The entire planet radiated a strange energy, unlike anything he had ever sensed. The air, though outside his ship, seemed to hum faintly with life, a reflection of the planet's sentience. A Thrylan emissary boarded his ship, tall and angular with iridescent skin that shimmered under the artificial lights. The alien's eyes, large and dark, studied Ethan with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "Doctor." "Carter," the emissary said, its voice melodic yet sharp, "you are here because our princess is ill. We do not understand your species' methods, but our own have failed. Follow me and act carefully." "Please show me to her." It was clear that they did not trust him, but the urgency of the princess's condition allowed him entry. He was led to the royal chambers, a series of rooms filled with intricate decorations that suggested a culture rich in history and artistry. And then he saw her, Princess Lyria. She lay on a raised platform, her body delicate and slender, wrapped in soft, luminous fabrics. Her skin was a pale lavender, almost glowing in the ambient light. Her eyes, a striking shade of emerald, were closed, and faint tremors ran through her form. Ethan's heart tightened. He had seen sick beings before, but something about Lyria's condition was different. It was as if the sickness had been woven into her very biology. "Doctor," the emissary said softly, "she is unwell. We do not know the cause. She has refused all treatments from our finest healers. Be cautious. I need samples and a full history of her condition." Hours passed as he studied her condition, running tests, analyzing biological readings, and comparing them with known pathogens. It was then that he discovered the root of the illness, a rare interstellar pathogen that thrived on Thrylan physiology but responded unexpectedly to human biochemistry. It explained why no Thrylan healer could cure her. It also explained why she was deteriorating so quickly. He needed to act, but the moment he suggested treatment, Lyria awoke. Her eyes opened suddenly, sharp and suspicious, and she glared at him. "I don't want your help," she said in a voice both commanding and fragile. "I do not trust humans, leave me. But if we do not act, your condition will worsen." He began treatment cautiously, introducing a specialized serum that combined human biochemistry with Thrylan biology. Lyria resisted, pulling away whenever he approached, her body tense and trembling. Ethan spoke softly, explaining each step, trying to earn her trust. "I need you to stay still for me," he said. "I am not your enemy, I want to help you live." Lyria continued to resist, her hatred of him evident in every glare and every word. She tested his patience constantly, demanding that he leave, refusing his care and mocking his methods. Yet Ethan remained steadfast. He understood that this was not just about curing an illness. It was about bridging a gap between two species that had never truly understood each other. During one late night, as he monitored her vitals, Ethan noticed something strange. Lyria's body reacted positively when he explained the reasoning behind his methods, almost as if understanding human logic comforted her. It was a small victory, but it gave him hope. He adjusted his approach, using careful explanations and subtle humor to calm her fears. One evening, as the palace lights dimmed, Lyria finally spoke without anger, her voice barely a whisper. "Why do you care so much? Humans do not matter here. Why me? And I want to help you live, not for the Empire, not for me, but for you." He worked tirelessly, often through the night, synthesizing new compounds, running simulations, and adjusting doses. Every small improvement brought relief to the court and tension to the palace, as nobles watched with a mixture of skepticism and hope. As days turned into a week, Lyria's condition began to stabilize, though she still resisted every effort to help her. Yet Ethan noticed changes, tiny, almost imperceptible signs of trust. She allowed him to adjust her bedding without complaint. She followed his instructions without arguing once or twice. And once, when he told a small joke about a human medical mishap on another planet, she almost smiled before quickly looking away. It was during one of these quiet nights that Ethan realized something important. Curing Lyria was not just a matter of science. It was a matter of empathy. Understanding her fears, respecting her culture, and showing patience were as crucial as the medicine itself. And yet, as he prepared another dose of the serum, he sensed the tension in the palace rising. Outside the royal chambers, shadows moved where they should not, and faint whispers hinted at the political dangers that always surrounded Thrylan royalty. Someone in the court did not want a human succeeding where their own had failed. Ethan knew he could not falter. Lyria's life depended on him, and failure was not an option. He took a deep breath and stepped forward once more, serum in hand, ready to face her hatred, her fear, and the unknown challenges ahead. For the first time, Lyria met his eyes without turning away. There was still anger there, but also a spark of recognition, a fleeting acknowledgement that perhaps this human was not like the rest. Ethan offered a calm, steady smile, one that carried patience, hope, and unwavering determination. And for the first time, Lyria did not pull away. The night stretched on, filled with quiet work, careful measurements, and cautious words. Outside, the palace hummed with life, unaware of the fragile connection forming in the princess's chambers. Inside, two beings from entirely different worlds began a journey neither could have predicted, one that would test courage, challenge beliefs, and ultimately change the destiny of the Thrylan Empire. Ethan could feel it in the very air. The universe had a plan far bigger than either of them, and somehow they were both at the center of it. He did not know what the future held, but one thing was clear. This was only the beginning. The morning sun rose over the Thrylan capital, painting the city in shades of violet and silver. Inside the royal chambers, Ethan Carter was already awake, preparing the day's treatments for Princess Lyria. The night had been long, but he had kept careful watch over her vitals, adjusting doses and monitoring reactions. Each small improvement brought him hope, but he knew the path to recovery was far from simple. Lyria lay quietly, her eyes half open, still wary of the human standing beside her. She did not speak, but her gaze followed him carefully. Ethan could sense the tension in her body, the way her fingers curled around the sheets, the slight tremble that betrayed her exhaustion. He knew she was observing him as much as he was observing her. Trust would not come quickly, but it had begun to crack. "Good morning, Princess," Ethan said softly. "How are you feeling today?" "Why do you keep asking that? You don't know anything about me." She had lived her whole life surrounded by power, expectations, and rules, and now she was faced with someone entirely different, someone she could neither control nor dismiss easily. He carefully administered the first treatment of the day, a delicate serum designed to strengthen her immune response. Lyria tensed at the touch, but Ethan remained calm, explaining each step. "I am adjusting this for your body, not mine," he said. "Every action I take is meant to help you, not hurt you." The Thrylan healers observed silently, their expressions a mixture of skepticism and admiration. None spoke, but Ethan knew that even their reserved approval was significant. It was in the late afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the high windows, that a turning point came. Lyria had been sitting up slightly, still reluctant, still distant. But when Ethan explained a minor adjustment in her treatment, she interrupted him. "Why do you keep talking to me? You think words will cure me." For the first time, she seemed genuinely curious. "And if I don't listen?" Days turned into a week, and Lyria's health continued to improve. Her strength returned slowly, and with it came a new, unexpected behavior. She began to observe Ethan when she thought he wasn't looking. She noted how carefully he measured doses, how patiently he explained each step, how he listened when she expressed fear or discomfort. It was an alien concept for her, a human who did not demand obedience, a being who treated her with respect despite her initial hostility. One evening, as the sky turned a deep violet, Lyria spoke unexpectedly. "Why are you here every day? Other humans would have left long ago." "I do not leave until I have done everything I can to help you." It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there, a tiny acknowledgement that he was different from what she had expected. The following days brought new challenges. Lyria's body reacted unpredictably to the treatments at times, and the pathogen proved resistant to certain human methods. Ethan had to innovate, using a combination of Thrylan biochemistry and human medicine to create new solutions. He spent hours in the palace's laboratory, experimenting and recalibrating compounds, aware that any mistake could set her back or worse. During one particularly tense evening, a serious complication arose. Lyria's temperature spiked suddenly, and her body trembled violently. Ethan acted without hesitation, using a last-resort human technique to stabilize her. The Thrylan healers watched in shock as his method worked, their skepticism giving way to awe. Lyria's body slowly calmed, her breathing returning to a steady rhythm. She opened her eyes, wide with fear and surprise. What did you do?" she whispered. "I used a method humans developed for extreme cases," Ethan explained. "It works because it respects the body's natural balance. You are safe now." Over the next few days, their interactions shifted subtly. Lyria began to cooperate more willingly, though she still tested him constantly. She asked questions about human medicine, about his experiences on other planets, about the strange customs of his world. Ethan answered patiently, using humor when appropriate, careful not to push too far too fast. One afternoon, while examining her pulse, he noticed her eyes following his every movement, curiosity battling suspicion. "Why do you study other species, Doctor?" she asked. "Because understanding life is the greatest adventure," Ethan replied. "Every being, every planet, every culture teaches us something new. And sometimes, we discover that we are stronger than we thought." For the first time, she allowed herself to feel something other than fear or anger toward him. It was during this period that the first real moment of connection occurred. One night, a quiet storm swept across the Thrylan city, lightning flashing against the violet sky. Lyria, unable to sleep, sat up and called softly, "Doctor." "Yes, Princess." "That proves it." She did not smile, but she let him sit near her, let him care for her, and let herself feel something close to trust. It was fragile, fleeting, but it was there. Over the next week, Lyria's condition improved steadily. Her body regained strength, her energy returned, and her mind grew sharper. She began to walk short distances under Ethan's supervision, her laughter occasionally escaping despite herself. The Thrylan court noticed the change, and whispers of admiration for the human physician spread quietly through the palace. Yet, the threat of political tension remained. Some nobles resented Ethan's influence, seeing a human gaining favor in the royal chambers as a challenge to their authority. Ethan noticed subtle glances, whispered warnings, and thinly veiled threats. But he focused on Lyria, knowing that her recovery and well-being were far more important than any court intrigue. One evening, as he recorded the day's observations, Lyria approached him, hesitating at the edge of the lab. "Doctor, will you stay tomorrow?" she asked softly, almost shyly. Ethan looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Yes, Princess, I will stay as long as you need me." I may not say it, but I appreciate you," she admitted. Ethan nodded gently, careful not to overreact. "I understand, and I appreciate you too. You are stronger than you know, Princess, and every day you prove it." The path ahead was still fraught with challenges, but for the first time he saw a future where Lyria would not only survive but thrive. The beginnings of trust, respect, and something deeper were forming, fragile as they were, yet undeniable. Outside, the city hummed with life under the violet sky, and the palace seemed to pulse with quiet anticipation. Two beings from entirely different worlds were learning to understand each other, bridging the gap between fear and hope, hatred and trust. And for Ethan, it was only the beginning of a journey that would change not only Lyria's life, but the fate of the Thrylan Empire itself. Days passed in the Thrylan Palace, each one brighter than the last. Princess Lyria's strength returned steadily, and with it came a shift in her attitude. She was no longer the sick, angry girl who had glared at Ethan with hatred. Instead, she moved with cautious curiosity, observing him in ways that both unsettled and intrigued him. Her emerald eyes, once full of suspicion, now carried faint hints of interest and admiration, though she would never admit it openly. Ethan, as always, remained patient. He knew that trust, once earned, could grow slowly, but its foundation had to be strong. He continued his treatments carefully, combining human medicine with Thrylan biology, adjusting every dose with precision. Each improvement brought hope, yet also a new set of challenges. The Thrylan court watched the progress closely. Some nobles were quietly impressed by Ethan's skill and dedication, while others whispered behind his back, questioning why a human, an outsider, was gaining influence within the palace. Their jealousy was subtle but constant, and Ethan felt the weight of it with every step he took in the corridors. One afternoon, as Lyria practiced walking along the palace garden, Ethan walked beside her, offering support. The gardens were vast, filled with towering crystalline plants that shimmered in the sunlight. Lyria's steps were careful but steady, and the faintest smile touched her lips as she leaned slightly on his arm. "You walk differently than the Thrylan," she said softly, her voice still carrying traces of defiance. "You move without arrogance, without fear. How do you do that?" "Walking without fear is just the first step." The Thrylan guards reacted immediately, their movements precise and practiced. Ethan's attention sharpened. Something was wrong. A messenger arrived, panting, his wings fluttering nervously. "Your Highness, the rival empire has mobilized. They have detected Princess Lyria's vulnerability and are moving to strike." "We can face this," he said firmly. "But we must be smart. Your safety is the priority." "I understand, Your Majesty, but we have options. We can use strategy, traps, and intelligence to outmaneuver them. Lyria's strength and courage are part of that plan." Ethan moved quickly, organizing a plan. He combined human tactical reasoning with Thrylan technology, devising strategies that relied on agility, precision, and careful use of resources. The palace became a hive of activity as soldiers prepared defenses, patrols were arranged, and secure zones were established. Lyria, despite her initial hesitation, insisted on learning the plans. She asked questions about each move, wanting to understand every step. Ethan was impressed by her sharp mind, her ability to think critically even while her body was still regaining strength. It was clear that she was no ordinary princess. She had the intelligence and determination of a true leader. As the hours passed, the enemy fleet approached. Ethan stood with Lyria on a balcony overlooking the city, the horizon filled with ships glowing against the violet sky. "They are powerful," he said quietly, "but we have the advantage. They underestimate humans and Thrylan alike. That is their mistake." "Then we will make them regret it," she said, her voice steady and commanding. Ethan felt a surge of pride. She was no longer the frightened, sick girl he had first met. She was a warrior, a strategist, and someone who could see the value in human ingenuity. The battle began at dusk. Enemy ships moved into position, their weapons charging with deadly intent. Ethan had predicted their tactics, and the palace defenses activated just as the first strike came. Energy shields shimmered, deflecting attacks, while carefully placed countermeasures disrupted the enemy's formation. Lyria stayed close to Ethan, observing every move. When a smaller attack breached the outer defenses, she acted instinctively, directing guards to respond with precision. Ethan's admiration grew. She had learned quickly, adapting to the situation in ways he could not have predicted. The enemy tried to exploit her previous illness, assuming she would panic or falter. But Lyria's composure was unshakable. She followed Ethan's guidance, implementing strategies he suggested, and even improvised when circumstances demanded. Each success strengthened her confidence and unexpectedly deepened her feelings toward him. During a critical moment, a blast struck near their position, shaking the balcony. Lyria stumbled, and Ethan caught her immediately, holding her steady. Their eyes met, and for a fleeting second, words were unnecessary. The shared danger, the trust, and the adrenaline formed a bond neither could ignore. "Stay close," Ethan said softly, his hand firm on her arm. "We face this together." Ethan's strategies proved effective, using misdirection and calculated maneuvers to weaken the enemy fleet. Lyria's leadership inspired the Thrylan soldiers, her courage turning fear into resolve. By midnight, the enemy forces were forced to retreat, their morale shattered by the coordinated defense. When silence finally fell over the palace, Ethan and Lyria stood on the balcony, surveying the aftermath. The city was safe, the enemy defeated, and the Thrylan Empire had survived against the odds. "You were incredible," Ethan said, his voice filled with admiration. "You stayed calm, smart, and brave. I am proud of you, Princess." I could not have done it without you," she admitted quietly. You taught me more than anyone ever has." "Ethan Carter, you have not only saved my daughter, but also defended the Empire. I see now that your human ways have value beyond what I imagined." For the first time, she allowed herself to show a sign of affection, a silent acknowledgement that her feelings toward him were changing. That night, as the palace settled into quiet, Ethan reflected on the events. The bond with Lyria was growing stronger, forged in the crucible of danger and shared experience. Her hatred had not vanished completely, but it had softened, replaced by trust, admiration, and the first hints of something deeper. Lyria, in her private chambers, could not sleep. The adrenaline of the battle still coursed through her veins, but her thoughts were focused on Ethan. She replayed every moment of the day, his calm demeanor, his unwavering support, his courage under pressure. Slowly, she realized that the human she had once despised had become someone she could rely on, someone she admired, and perhaps someone she cared for. Her hand lingered on the edge of her desk, where a small note from Ethan had been left that morning. "Rest well, princess. Tomorrow is another day, and we face it together." For a moment, she allowed herself to feel gratitude, even affection. She had never thought it possible to feel warmth for a human, yet here she was, thinking of him with a mixture of admiration and something more elusive. Ethan, meanwhile, remained vigilant. The enemy might have retreated, but the political tension within the palace was far from resolved. Some nobles resented his influence, and others feared the bond forming between human and princess. Yet he remained undeterred. His mission was clear: ensure Lyria's recovery, protect her, and continue to bridge the gap between their species. As dawn approached, the palace hummed quietly with renewed life. The Thrylan Empire had survived the attack, thanks in large part to human ingenuity and the courage of a young princess. And as Ethan and Lyria faced the new day together, it was clear that their journey was far from over. Something stronger was forming: trust, friendship, and the first stirrings of love. And both of them sensed it, even if neither dared speak the words aloud. For Ethan, this was more than a mission. It was a chance to show the universe the power of human courage, empathy, and intelligence. For Lyria, it was the beginning of understanding a world beyond the walls of the palace, and perhaps the first time in her life she could imagine a future shaped not by fear or hatred, but by trust and hope. And in that quiet, fragile moment before the sun rose fully over the Thrylan capital, both of them felt it, the subtle, unspoken truth that their lives were now intertwined, and that together they could face any challenge the universe might throw their way. The Thrylan Empire had enjoyed a brief moment of calm. The palace corridors hummed with routine, guards patrolled with measured precision, and the royal family began to settle after the recent attack. But the shadow of danger lingered. Ethan Carter knew the enemy would not remain defeated for long. They were clever, ruthless, and eager to exploit any weakness. Princess Lyria, once fragile and sick, now moved with confidence. Her emerald eyes, sharp and alert, reflected the lessons learned from the last battle. She had gained strength, agility, and courage. But more than that, she had begun to trust Ethan, not blindly, but in a way that showed she recognized his value not only as a healer, but as a companion in both strategy and survival. Ethan walked beside her in the palace gardens, observing the subtle changes in her demeanor. She walked lightly, her steps balanced, her gaze alert yet calm. "You've grown strong," he said quietly, careful not to sound patronizing. Lyria smirked slightly. "I had a good teacher, not that I would admit it publicly." "I am glad you see the results of your own courage as well." Intelligence reports indicated the rival empire had regrouped and was preparing a new strike, one more powerful, more coordinated, and more ruthless. They knew the Thrylan had relied on human strategies last time, and they would try to counter them. The warning came late in the evening. A messenger arrived at the royal chambers, breathless and urgent. "Your Highness, the enemy fleet has advanced rapidly. They intend to strike at dawn. This attack, it will not be small. They have brought reinforcements we did not anticipate. We must combine every advantage we have: strategy, technology, and human ingenuity. And we must act quickly. But I need your support and the princess's full cooperation." He devised ambushes, feints, and defensive formations designed to exploit the enemy's assumptions. The palace became a command center, alive with strategy, preparation, and tense anticipation. By dawn, the enemy fleet was visible on the horizon, dark shapes moving through the violet sky, their weapons gleaming ominously. Ethan stood beside Lyria on a high balcony, overlooking the city. "Remember," he said, "they will expect fear. We will give them courage instead." Energy blasts lit the sky, shaking the palace and sending vibrations through the city. Ethan's strategies were put to the test immediately. He coordinated countermeasures, directing the Thrylan defenses with precision. Lyria observed, issuing commands where necessary, her mind sharp and quick. During the chaos, a smaller enemy squadron broke through the outer defenses, heading straight for the palace. Lyria's pulse quickened, but she did not panic. Ethan moved beside her, ready to protect her. When the first blast struck near the balcony, she stumbled and he caught her without hesitation. "Stay close," he said firmly. "Do not move until I say it is safe." Using a combination of human ingenuity and Thrylan technology, the palace defenses countered every maneuver. Lyria's confidence grew with each successful defense, and the soldiers followed her lead, inspired by her courage. At one critical moment, a blast breached the palace's outer walls. Lyria was exposed, standing near the ramparts, and enemy fire approached. Without hesitation, Ethan acted. He shielded her with his own body, deflecting debris and guiding her to safety. "Are you hurt?" he asked once they were in a secure room. "No, thanks to you," she said, her voice shaking slightly. I owe you my life." "You owe it to yourself, for surviving, for fighting, for being brave." Reinforcements continued to pour in, and the battle reached its climax. Ethan coordinated the final defense, using every advantage at his disposal. Lyria fought alongside him, her commands precise, her movements agile, her mind sharp. Together, they turned the tide. The enemy fleet, demoralized and battered, began a retreat. As silence finally fell over the battlefield, the palace was battered but intact. The city had survived, and the Thrylan Empire had been defended once again. Ethan and Lyria stood on the balcony, surveying the horizon, the enemy fleet disappearing into the distance. "You were incredible," Ethan said, his voice filled with admiration. "You stayed calm, smart, and brave. I am proud of you, Princess. You are remarkable." The Queen approached, her eyes reflecting relief and pride. "Ethan Carter, you have not only saved my daughter but also defended the Empire. I see now that your human ways have value beyond what I imagined." The unspoken connection between them was clear. She had come to rely on him, to trust him, and in that trust she had found the beginnings of love. That night, as the palace settled into quiet, Ethan and Lyria found themselves in a shared moment of reflection. They sat together in the palace garden, the stars above twinkling like distant gems. "You saved my life today," Lyria said softly, her voice carrying vulnerability she rarely displayed. "Not just with your strategies or your strength, but by being here, by not giving up on me. And I will not let anyone harm you while I can prevent it. We may come from different worlds, but that does not change what we mean to each other." The night stretched on, filled with quiet laughter, shared stories, and gentle conversation. For Lyria, it was the first time she had felt safe enough to express her feelings, even indirectly. For Ethan, it was the affirmation that his dedication, patience, and courage had forged a connection stronger than fear or hatred. And as dawn approached, casting soft light over the Thrylan capital, both of them knew that the journey was far from over. The universe was vast, full of challenges and dangers yet to come. But together they had faced death, strategy, and fear, and they had emerged stronger. The bond between human and princess had shifted forever. Hatred had turned to trust, fear to courage, and resentment to love. And in that fragile, quiet moment, both Ethan and Lyria understood one undeniable truth. They were no longer alone, and together they could face anything the universe sent their way. The Thrylan Empire had survived its greatest threat, but the palace remained tense. The nobles whispered behind closed doors, unsure how to treat the human who had not only healed the princess, but also led the defenses of the empire. Yet, inside the royal chambers, a quiet calm had settled. Princess Lyria was fully recovered now, her strength, courage, and sharp mind shining brighter than ever. Ethan Carter stood beside her in the palace garden, watching her move with confidence among the crystalline plants. Lyria's emerald eyes sparkled in the soft light, reflecting both intelligence and a newfound warmth that she no longer tried to hide. Their bond had grown through trials, danger, and shared experience, and now it had reached a stage that neither could deny. "You have changed so much in these weeks," Ethan said softly, his gaze following her every move. "You are strong, confident, and unafraid. Not just in strategy, but in patience and in understanding." They had faced life and death together, and in doing so had discovered the strength and value of human and Thrylan partnership. Later that day, the Queen summoned them both. She had been quiet in her observations, weighing Ethan's influence and the changes in her daughter. Now her presence filled the room, commanding attention. "Ethan Carter," she said, her voice steady, "you have proven yourself invaluable. Not only have you healed my daughter, but you have also helped secure the Empire against our enemies. I have watched the bond you share with Lyria, and I must consider what this means for the future of the Thrylan people. My only desire has been to serve, to heal, and to protect Lyria. Princess, the queen continued, you have survived great trials and you have grown in strength and wisdom. Your life has been intertwined with that of this human. I see that he has earned your trust and perhaps even your heart, more than I have ever cared for anyone else. Then it is my decree that Ethan Carter shall be recognized not merely as a healer or advisor, but as your consort, your partner in life and in duty. Together, you will represent the unity of Thrylan and human understanding. Ethan stepped closer, taking her hands in his. I do, with my life, my dedication, and my heart, he said. I will be by your side in every challenge, every joy, and every moment to come. Let it be known that humanity and Thrylan's strength are joined, and that together we can face the universe's challenges. Hope and admiration for the princess, and for the human who had stood beside her, spread through the streets like wildfire. In the days that followed, Ethan and Lyria took on new responsibilities together. They studied reports of other planetary threats, worked to strengthen alliances, and shared ideas that blended human creativity with Thrylan technology. Their partnership was more than personal. It became a symbol of unity and progress, a bridge between species. Ethan was amazed by how seamlessly they worked together. Lyria's sharp mind and strategic insight complemented his human ingenuity perfectly. She learned quickly, absorbing knowledge with remarkable speed, and often surprised him with innovative ideas. One afternoon, as they walked through the gardens, Lyria stopped and looked at him with a quiet smile. I never thought I would find someone from another world I could trust completely, she said. And yet, here you are. Yet here you are. His human perspective, combined with Lyria's leadership, had created a new era for the Empire, one of cooperation, understanding, and resilience. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the Thrylan capital, Ethan and Lyria stood on a high balcony, overlooking the city that had been both their battlefield and their sanctuary. The sky was alive with soft light, and the air carried the faint hum of life from the planet below. We have come a long way, Ethan said, his voice reflective, from hatred and sickness to trust and strength. Ethan smiled, feeling the truth of her words resonate in his heart. Yes, he replied softly, love that is forged through trials, understanding, and respect, love that bridges worlds. The Empire was safe, the princess was healthy, and the bond between human and Thrylan had grown into something unbreakable. In the weeks that followed, preparations were made for a formal ceremony to recognize Ethan as Lyria's consort. The palace was adorned with crystalline banners, glowing softly in the twilight. Nobles and dignitaries from across the empire gathered to witness the union, their skepticism replaced by admiration and respect. When the ceremony began, Lyria stood proudly beside Ethan. The queen spoke of bravery, healing, and unity, acknowledging Ethan's role in saving her daughter and defending the empire. Lyria's hand found Ethan's, their fingers intertwining, a public declaration of the bond that had been forged in private trials and shared triumphs. You are mine as I am yours, Lyria said softly, her voice carrying across the assembly. Not by duty, not by expectation, but by choice, trust, and love. In loyalty, in protection, in heart, and in life. Together we face the future, united in strength and purpose. As the ceremony concluded, Ethan and Lyria walked through the palace gardens, hand in hand. The crystalline plants shimmered in the evening light, reflecting the beauty of their bond. They spoke of the future, plans to strengthen the empire, to explore new worlds, and to share knowledge across galaxies. Lyria paused, looking up at him with a smile. I never thought I could find someone who sees me for who I truly am. But you see me, Ethan, and I see you too. The universe was vast and full of challenges, but together they were unstoppable. Human ingenuity and Thrylan's strength had combined, creating a partnership that would endure all trials. And for the first time in her life, Lyria felt a peace that went beyond health or power. She felt love, trust, and hope, a future bright with possibility, shared with someone who had earned her heart and would protect it always. Ethan, in turn, felt a fulfillment deeper than any achievement he had known. He had come to this alien world to heal, to study, and to survive, yet he had discovered something far greater, a bond that transcended worlds, a partnership built on courage, respect, and love. Together, they stood on the balcony, gazing at the city that had been both battlefield and sanctuary. The wind carried the hum of life from the planet below, a reminder of the strength and resilience of those they had fought to protect. And as they held each other's hands, they knew one truth above all else. United, they could face any challenge, conquer any fear, and embrace a future that was theirs to shape. The Thrylan Empire was safe, the princess was well, and a human had become more than a healer. He had become a partner, a symbol of hope, and a reminder that even in the vastness of the universe, understanding and love could bridge the deepest divides. And as the twin moons rose high in the violet sky, Ethan and Lyria shared their first quiet, unhurried moment of true peace. Two hearts from different worlds, united by courage, trust, and the promise of all the adventures yet to come.